Thank you, Dr. Lifton. I am honored to be part of the celebration of Dr. Pamela Björkman, the David Baltimore Professor of Biology and Bioengineering at California Institute of Technology and the 2021 recipient of Rockefeller University's Pearl Meister Greengard Prize for Outstanding Women in Biomedical Research. Congratulations, Dr. Björkman. You join a lineage of 22 outstanding women scientists who before you have received this award. Your addition makes the lineage of awardees that much more distinguished. If Dr. Paul Greengard were still with us, I would say to him, and I say to his spouse, the renowned sculptor, Ms. Ursula von Reitingsvard, that as an art historian who's been married to a physicist for 53 years, I am so inspired by your generosity and purposefulness as a scientist-artist couple. I'm inspired not only by your willingness to use all of the proceeds of Dr. Greengard's 2000 Nobel Prize to seed the establishment of this award at Rockefeller University in 2004, but also by your willingness and honesty to call out a bias on the part of the scientific enterprise. The award is meant to be a means of remedying the negative impact of this bias within the field. As we all know, the genesis of the award, in part, was to acknowledge the discrimination women face in science and the fact that their contributions are often not adequately acknowledged. Based on the evidence of the past 17 years, we can all agree that the gift has accomplished exactly what it set out to accomplish, and that is to shine a bright light on the groundbreaking contributions of women in science. 3 women who have received the Pearl Meister Greengard Award have gone on to receive the Nobel Prize for their work. I'm inspired, too, to learn that the gift honors the memory of Dr. Greengard's mother, Pearl Meister Greengard, who by all accounts was a smart, talented young woman who died giving birth to Dr. Greengard. I was especially moved by Dr. Greengard's words in a September 26, 2006 New York Times interview. In the interview, Dr. Greengard recalls that as he discovered more and more about his mother, he learned that she was Jewish, that a photograph that he had thought was of her was someone else, and there was not one shred of physical evidence of her existence. Memories of her had been buried. Part of the motivation for establishing the award was to disinter those memories, to make her visible to the world, to make her story seen and known to the world. And that, too, has been accomplished with the telling of her story every year. This resonated with me. Spelman College is in the business of making visible the talents of women whose talents otherwise might remain invisible to the world. Dr. Greengard, Vincent Astor Professor and Director of the Fisher Center for Alzheimer's Disease Research at Rockefeller University, certainly did not suffer from invisibility in his career. A member of the Rockefeller University faculty since 1983, Dr. Greengard became well known for his investigation into the signaling method of neuronal communication. That amounted to what President Lifton has described as a paradigmatic shift in the understanding of the biochemistry of nerve cells. In 2000, Dr. Greengard shared the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for work that laid the groundwork for therapies that address any number of chronic and debilitating diseases of the brain, including Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Nor does the work of his wife, Ursula von Reitingsvard, suffer from invisibility. Her larger-than-life sculptures, with their majestic presence, create for the viewer a kind of Grand Canyon experience of space and time. What I like about this prize is the recognition that talent does not necessarily grow and manifest itself on its own. More often than not, talent requires time, attention, cultivation, in order to push itself forward to become visible to the world. Dr. Greengard and Ms. von Reitingsvaart understood that having one of the world's leading research institutions confer an award, established by a Nobel laureate, in an amount that was significant, and in the context of a meaningful ceremony, was the kind of care and attention that could enable women scientists to reap the benefits of the hard work and accomplishments they have sown during their careers. That resonated with me as well. At Spelman, our reason for being is to cultivate in the young women we educate at Spelman College not only the expertise, but the will to succeed, the confidence in the validity of their voice, and in the value of what they bring to the table. And succeed they do. No other baccalaureate college in the country produces more Black women who earn PhDs in STEM fields than Spelman College. This year, we have a record 800 first-year students. Half of those students have declared either biology or health science careers as their major. We know that among young Black women, the desire to excel in the biological and medical sciences is there. Our job is to give them the tools to succeed, not only at Spelman, but beyond the Spelman gates. Here today, representing Spelman College as its 10th president, I am especially honored to present this particular award to this particular awardee, Dr. Pamela Björkman. Dr. Pamela Björkman's laboratory is described on the Caltech website as, quote, interested in immune recognition of viral pathogens. We are investigating the immune responses against HIV-1 and other viruses, most recently SARS-CoV-2, in order to develop improved therapeutics and or vaccines, end quote. And I could not help but notice that on the website, there's a list of announcements, many of them heralding the accomplishments of the women in Dr. Björkman's lab. Dr. Björkman's work could not be more timely. As we experience a surge of infections, hospitalizations, and deaths from the Delta variant of the COVID-19 virus, and knowing that as the virus continues to mutate, other variants are sure to emerge, Dr. Björkman's lab has been investigating a multi-strain vaccine that could prove effective against a variety of variants. As she and others counsel, we are racing against time. It is not a matter of if, and as she pointed out in a recent Atlantic magazine article, but when there will be another coronavirus. Her lab and the work of the talented men and women in it are a bulwark against the next viral invasion. They could not be doing the work they are doing without that attention to the care and cultivation of their talent, and it is in that work, Dr. Björkman, that you, this prize, and Rockefeller University are an inspiration to Spelman College. Dr. Lifton, in your introduction, you reminded us that Spelman College and Rockefeller University share the same seminal donor, John D. Rockefeller. Let me digress for a moment to tell the Spelman College origin story, because I think it has some lessons for today and for all of us attending this ceremony. According to one of Rockefeller's biographers, Ronald Chernow, our school was Mr. Rockefeller's first major philanthropy. His interest in the school came about in the decades after the Civil War. After the war, the South was deeply wounded and fractured. Moreover, millions of emancipated slaves had few educational pathways available to them. While some options for Black men were taking shape, there were very few educational opportunities for Black women. Two white missionaries, Sophia B. Packard and Harriet E. Giles, teachers from Salem, Massachusetts, traveled to Atlanta, Georgia, explicitly to remedy the lack of education for Black women and girls by starting the Atlanta Baptist Female Seminary. On day 1, April 11, 1881, 10 Black women and 1 Black girl showed up to Packard and Giles' new school. Their classroom was a soot-filled basement in Friendship Baptist Church, one of the oldest black churches in Atlanta. Those first students came to learn to read and write. By learning to read and write, activities forbidden to slaves, they could read the Bible to their families and write letters for members of their communities. Now, to keep this school running, the two Baptist missionaries, Packard and Giles, had to fundraise. And one Sunday morning, friends arranged for them to attend a church service in Cleveland, Ohio, knowing that among the attendees would be John D. Rockefeller and his wife, Laura Spelman Rockefeller. John D. Rockefeller was already on his way to becoming the richest man in America. His wife, Laura Spelman Rockefeller, was not only from a family of staunch abolitionists who had been members of the Underground Railroad, she had also studied at one of the schools up north where Packard and Giles taught. As John and Laura sat in the Cleveland church and listened to Sophia B. Packard talk about providing the best education possible, the Rockefellers were inspired by the idea of this school for emancipated black women. But before he made a gift, Mr. Rockefeller insisted on knowing from Packard and Giles, will it stick? Will this school stick? He claimed that he only gave money to something that was going to be around for a while, something that would stick. 140 years later, Mr. Rockefeller would be pleased to know that this school he supported did stick. He and his wife went on to make many gifts, and the school was named in the late 19th century Spelman Seminary, after Laura Spelman's family, and in 1924, Spelman College. Spelman College has come a long way from teaching reading and writing in a sooty basement. Our academic partnerships with research centers like the Broad Institute of MIT Harvard, a joint neuroscience graduate program with Morehouse School of Medicine, and a soon-to-be-established partnership with Johns Hopkins University, the school from which Dr. Greengard received a PhD, are just a few of the relationships that enable our women to prepare for highly competitive graduate and professional studies in STEM fields. These partnerships are a community of purpose whose goal is to overcome the persistent barriers that black women who attend Spelman face and have faced for 140 years in a country that still bears the wounds of the war that gave birth to Spelman in the first place. Because of John D. Rockefeller's continuing philanthropy, Rockefeller University was founded 20 years after Spelman in 1901 in order to advance the study of biomedical research, the country's first such institution. As our country grew into an industrial and financial behemoth, John D. Rockefeller correctly recognized that basic science, buttressed by first-rate educational institutions and research centers, were essential in order for the country to advance. In the case of Rockefeller University, the investment would lead over time to your becoming, as you describe yourselves, the gold standard of bioscience. Because of the generosity of our mutual donor, and in part with the continuing support of the family's generosity to both of our institutions, we each, in our own way, have played a critical role in shaping the future of science in this country. Yet, we all know that if we have discovered how to make progress towards gender equity, we have not been nearly as successful with racial equity. As we are learning from the most recent census, the population of black and brown young people is climbing rapidly and now constitutes a majority of the school-age population. We know that, for the most part, this population is not entering and completing high-quality undergraduate programs, completing graduate degrees, competing for postdocs, and landing in research labs at rates commensurate with their growing presence in the population. We spend a great deal of time at Spelman understanding where the barriers might arise, and finding ways to prepare our women to clear the hurdles they will inevitably face. We ask ourselves, how well are they prepared? And what can we do to make them even more prepared? What do our women need to succeed? Do they need study groups, community cohorts, mentors, coaches? Are we preparing them to present papers at conferences, win placements in important research labs, land the kind of internship that will inform their graduate work? Do we groom them to become co-authors of research papers and develop their presentation skills? Are they prepped to compete in national and international competitions that require them to stretch beyond their comfort zone? Who is in the classroom with them? Who wants to see them succeed? These are the questions we, the administrators, faculty, students, and staff at Spelman ask ourselves all the time. We are unrelenting. Why, you might ask? I mentioned that my husband is a physicist, and this year the American Physical Society invited him to write a reflections piece on his career as a Black physicist for the back page of the APS newsletter. Having earned his PhD in theoretical particle physics in 1977 from Syracuse University, my husband, Dr. George Campbell Jr., President Emeritus of the Cooper Union for the Advancement of Science and Art, went on to work at AT&T Bell Laboratories, at the time another leading research institute. In the article, he made note of the fact that in 1977, when he earned his doctorate, there were 7 Black physicists awarded PhDs in physics out of 1,000 physics PhDs awarded that year. He goes on to note that 40 years later, in 2017, there were 14 Black physicists awarded PhDs in physics out of 2,000 physics PhDs awarded that year, exactly the same proportion as 40 years earlier. As a group of educators who care about equity in the practice of science, we all have to ask, what steps do we all need to take to make meaningful breakthroughs in bias and discrimination that prevail around race? I raise this issue tonight because I know that I am speaking to an audience that cares about the elimination of all kinds of inequities in order to open the practice of science to the most diverse set of ideas and possibilities available. Make no mistake, I am well aware that there's a great deal of work to be done in our institutions and long before students reach our institutions. Many of our urban school systems are broken and cheat some of our most promising students out of a good K12 education. We know that very often high-need, high-performing students don't even apply to college, let alone to elite schools. And many times, when they do attend four-year colleges, they find the obstacles too numerous and too daunting to overcome. We can see it in the graduation rates for Black and Latinx students that are among the lowest in the country. These obstacles are formidable, but not insurmountable. Take the issue of K-12 education. When a group of Atlanta principals from our local schools asked us to assist with the literacy problem in their schools, Spelman responded with an intervention implemented by our students. The college, coached by one of our family literacy experts, deployed a group of over 100 highly trained Spelman students to teach literacy to 5th, 6th, and 7th graders at a group of local schools. Over a period of 2 years, the results of this after-school tutorial program were impressive. Reading assessments improved by as much as 20%. A similar effort called Math Corps, designed at Wayne State and supervised by a Spelman faculty who was a participant in the Wayne State program, will be deployed this semester by sending our best mathematics students to provide immersive mathematics tutorials to high school students every Saturday. We believe that as an educational institution, we have to reach back and extend a hand even as we are encouraging our own students to look forward into their future. I've looked at the website of Rockefeller University's Summer Science Research Program, designed for 16-year-olds, and I see in that program the same impulse to build real skills that will begin to build a bridge between high school and college. There is much work to be done, but not to do this work is to leave untold numbers of promising young people invisible, untended, their talents buried needlessly. Once again, congratulations, Dr. Björkman. The imagination and vision of Dr. Greengard and his wife, Ursula von Reisenwald, ensured that the spirit of Pearl Meister Greengard lives, and women in science are the better for it. Their model inspires us to reach for even more.